So I bought 4 phones for around $100, 3 new, 1 used. And I'm going to go over some of the pros and cons of phones in this price range and which route I recommend taking. So for starters, let's go over the phones, some of the specs, and the price I paid for each one. So first on the list is the TCL 30Z. So I bought this phone for $110. It has 32 gigabytes of storage. It is expandable. It has 3 gigabytes of RAM, a 3000 milliamp battery, 720p HD screen, 8 megapixel rear and 5 megapixel front facing camera. And it runs Android Go, which is a light version of Android which was created specifically for lower spec phones like this one. So second on the list is the ZTE Blade A51. Now this phone I bought for $105. It has 64 gigabytes of storage. It is expandable. Has 2 gigabytes of RAM, 3200 milliamp battery, 720p HD screen, 13 megapixel rear, 5 megapixel front facing camera, and it also runs Android Go. Third in line is the Nokia C21. So this phone I bought for $110. Has 32 gigabytes of storage, is also expandable, has 2 gigabytes of RAM, 3000 milliamp battery, 720p HD screen, 8 megapixel rear camera, 5 megapixel front camera, and also running Android Go. And finally, fourth on the list is my pre-owned option, and I went with the Samsung Galaxy S10e. And this phone I was able to purchase it for $120. It comes with 128 gigabytes of storage, 6 gigabytes of RAM, 3100 milliamp battery, 1080p full HD screen, 12 megapixel main camera, 16 megapixel ultra wide camera, and 10 megapixel front facing camera. And this is running Android 12. So now that we have some details on these phones, let's go over some of the pros. First one being that all these phones have 3.5mm audio jacks, which is still a pro for many. This next group of pros is specifically for the TCL, Nokia, and ZTE. And for starters, these phones are all brand new, and that is a pro. It's a great feeling to buy something and unwrap it for the first time. Second is that they all have great battery life, especially considering that they have 3000 milliamp batteries, which is not large in today's standards. The battery life is good on these phones. And lastly is the Android Go OS. So this platform is very efficient. It takes advantage of the limited power that these phones have, and it keeps them lean, running lean and smoothly. So anything from watching videos, sending text messages, browsing the web, or making calls all goes super smoothly, and I would say it's because of Android Go. So this next group of pros is specifically for the S10e. So the S10e has a lot of flagship features that people like, and this is because the S10e was a flagship phone. For starters, the screen is the best from the group. It has an AMOLED screen at 1080p, great viewing angles, great clarity, great dynamic range. Next is the processor and RAM. They are very capable even to today's standards. 6 gigabytes of RAM is still being used for a lot of the mid-range phones nowadays. Obviously, anything from watching videos, Netflix, YouTube, and all the usual tasks work perfectly. I even tested playing Injustice 2 on this, and it ran it smoothly, no issues at all. Next, I would say that the small form factor was actually a pro. It was refreshing to be able to hold the phone in my hands, and it fit super comfortably. Obviously, the bigger screens of the newer phones are amazing. I love them. Great for watching and scrolling and through websites and everything. But just being able to hold a phone and not have such a big footprint on my hand and pocket is refreshing. It's nice to have. Third is actually the battery. So on this phone, I did buy it pre-owned, and I have no doubt that the battery was replaced, because there's no way that a phone of 3 to 4 years is gonna have a battery lasting this long. So this battery is actually lasting me all day without any issues. So, and I also use the app called AccuBattery, and this is stating that it has around 87% of the overall battery remaining in the battery life. To kind of put things into perspective here, on brand new phones, the AccuBattery is usually telling me that it has around 94 and 93%. So from 94 to 87 is not too big of a drop. And continue with the battery, the standby time is not as long as the Android Go phones that we have on the table here. But I did run an 8-hour video streaming test, and when the battery and the processing is actually being used consistently, the S10e actually outlasts the other three phones, and by quite a bit. So I have the numbers here. The TCL after 8 hours had only 5% battery remaining. The Nokia had 13%. The ZTE had 23%, and the S10e had 37% of battery remaining. So when it comes to using the power, because it's a better chip, it's gonna have more. It's gonna be more efficient for any task that takes a little bit of power. So another pro is that the S10e has dual speakers, which is great for watching videos. You don't necessarily have to put on headphones to have a good sound experience with this phone. And next on the list is the Wi-Fi connection. So the S10e can connect to a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi connection or Wi-Fi network. I actually ran a test with all four phones, and so the S10e using the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, I was able to get 180 megabits per second, while the other phones were averaging around 30 megabits per second because they were using the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. That's just another plus for for this phone, and especially at this price range. Lastly is the camera. So the S10e still takes good pictures. It's probably still comparable to most phones nowadays. It's gonna fall behind to the modern flagships because they improve every year, but when you compare it to mid-grade phones, it's probably going to be as good or better than a lot of the mid-grade phones, and it's definitely going to be better than any phone in the $100 range. Now let's go over the cons. So this first con is shared between all the phones, and that is that none of them can connect to 5G mobile networks. They are all running 4G, which you still get good speeds with 4G, but the future is 5G, and buying these phones, you're going to be missing out on that, especially as it starts expanding and becoming more widespread. So let's move on to the next group of cons, which is going to be specifically for the TCL, Nokia, and ZTE. And the first one on that one is that neither of these three phones can connect to 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and obviously that's a con because you have reduced download speeds. Next is that neither of these three phones has a camera that's good enough to be your main photography tool. So the images they're lacking color, they're lacking clarity. If you're going to be posting on social media, or if you want to, if you like taking nice pictures, these phones are not going to do the job. If you are intent on using this as your main camera, be prepared to become familiar with photo editing software. There's just no way around it. If you want your photos to come out halfway decent, then you're going to have to get good with editing software. Another con is the built-in camera apps. So they lack a lot of features that you would expect to have in phones. One of them doesn't have portrait at all. Another has selective focus, which is slow, but it can be used as a portrait mode. It's just going to take some time. And then the TCL has a portrait mode, which is half decent, but it's only for the front-facing camera. Not sure why it's not included for the rear-facing camera. I mean, that could be remedied with a third-party app. I looked through a bunch of camera apps, third-party camera apps. I found one called Pixtica, which is pretty good, probably the best one I used. Downside is that it leaves a watermark on the bottom right corner of the photo, unless you pay a $3 yearly fee or a $5 one-time fee, which if you're gonna get one of these phones, I would recommend paying the $5 one-time fee and using that camera app over the standard ones. So the last con for these group of phones is the charging, and that is because they don't have fast charging. So this won't matter to for anyone that charges their phone overnight and the battery lasts all day for them. It's only for those that do midday charging. It does take a bit longer than upper tier phones that have fast charging. And then my last con is for the TCL specifically. Now, it's only for the YouTube app, but it's a chore just to get around the app. Everything moves slow on YouTube app for the TCL. Just going from portrait to landscape mode and back takes quite a bit of time, probably 4 seconds. Not sure why there's such a delay. I mean, I tried Netflix on it, and Netflix works perfectly. I've watched videos on just the internet on a web browser, works perfectly. So it just seems like it's something with the YouTube app on the TCL phone that really just does not let it function smoothly. And that's the only app I was able to really find an issue with on any of these phones. So given all the pros and cons that I just went over, I can safely say that there are options for purchasing a phone near $100, even if it is a bit limited. Obviously, there are things that will need to be given up when you're buying a phone in this price range. On one end, you will have to give up some features, but you end up with a brand new phone. On the other, you get a phone with some wear and tear, but it has most, if not all, of the expected features of a top tier phone. While I was talking about my experience testing these phones, the comment of, well, obviously it's a Samsung S series was blurted out. And that kind of says it all. From the phones used in this video in my test, I would recommend going with a Samsung S10e over the other three options. And I am actually walking the walk here. So during my testing, I came in need of a second phone to keep my work and personal stuff separate. I immediately grabbed the Galaxy S10e, plopped in my second SIM card, and started using it as my work phone. And I haven't looked back since. So I also don't want to give unrealistic expectations. So I just want to go over the details of the S10e, how I got it, and what condition I got it in. In order to kind of be more competitive with the three other phones that I have here that were near 110, I actually had to get an S10e that had a condition rating of fair, which is the lowest that's out there, at least from what I've seen. Basically, the phone that you're getting is going to have more visible scratches. It's not going to be in as good a condition as one that you would get, let's say, in excellent condition. So I did get one in fair condition. Now they were able to get it at $120. I mean, besides the fact that the phone looks like it was previously owned by Freddy Krueger, it works wonderful. It's fast, it's still clear. But I would say if you were to get a pre-owned phone, look for the better condition. So just keep in mind that Samsung is not the end all be all. I just happen to prefer Samsung, so I went with the S10e. For anyone who doesn't like Samsung, there are going to be options for other brands out there. So just look around, you'll find something out there. With that said, obviously my recommendation is go used or pre-owned, depending on how nice you want it to sound. So you go pre-owned, you get a better option or better phone for around the same price. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Also, please comment with your thoughts and let me know if you would like to see this type of comparison in a different price range. See ya.